Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the next installation of the fabulous information you're going to get about college, college applications, and the whole process um, with Harriet, Kaylee, and Robert. So, Harry, you want to take over and introduce or kind of summarize what you're going to do and do your thing?
So this particular presentation started out in person, of course, a couple years ago, where we did a boot camp at Freestyle because I was getting a lot of questions about just how to navigate the applications. So it's a little bit more technical. There are other videos that Mr. Florendo has made available to you guys with our discussions of just about the college process and utilizing your freestyle experience to support your looking for programs and how to apply to programs. But this one is really meant to answer questions you guys might have about how to actually fill in these applications. So we're going to go through all the slides and give you an overview. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and we'll get to them either, respond while we're giving the presentation, or we'll have some time at the end for some questions. So this is the admissions overview. I don't know how many of you guys have friends who are seniors. This year just again revealed how difficult it is to predict admissions decisions. And I will tell you wholeheartedly that more and more colleges are using things like the wait list and other kinds of data aggregation to really try to predict who's going to say yes to them. That matters to them because they don't like not to get the yield that they want, and it just makes their process a little bit more streamlined. So knowing that on the college side, they're data driven and they also are following institutional priorities. So they have priorities that are set by their board of governors, maybe for public institutions by the state, certainly by the faculty, by alumni and big donors. There's just all these people who have who are stakeholders. And so when I know you've probably already heard the term holistic admissions, and really what that means is they're not going to tell you why they will admit a student or not. And so all you guys can do is really look at the things that will help you to make a case for why a college is a good fit. We've talked about fit before, and this is about how are you going to present yourself holistically to the colleges. So character does matter. They are looking for not the kids necessarily who have the highest GPAs. I mean, I hear all the time, well, so-and-so's friend got in and their GPA wasn't as high. It's not just about the GPA. It is, again, about a complement of factors that will lead the admissions committee to think, yes, they are actually going to come. So they're looking for evidence of your involvement, of your passion, and of your leadership. Now, everybody take a deep breath. We all know that COVID has impacted extracurriculars and maintaining engagement, but these terms are being used very broadly now. And I have had kids who have written about or put in their activities that they have, coffee time with friends, or probably boba tea time with friends, but that they are getting together with their friends. And there's a lot of support, especially for kids who are experiencing anxiety or depression, which is very common. And, again, making choices about how you're going to spend your time. When a family asks me, should my child do X, Y, and Z this summer? My response is, well, what does your student want to do? Because really, that's what counts, not trying to figure out, will this look good to admissions, and is this what admissions wants? That's a fool's errand, you guys, and I would not spend time doing that. So how will you use your summer? Reading outside of school assignments is important. Again, if you are creating art or thinking about applying with portfolios or auditions, so visual or performing arts, or you're just going to do an art supplement, even if you're applying for biology. Start to think about how can you gather your materials and be ready to actually complete those supplemental requirements. Those are all posted on the websites. And even though for the colleges, they might change a little bit once the new applications come out in the fall, you can look at what was required this year and start to get everything together. I'm going to talk about standardized tests, but just know that in terms of colleges awarding credit for APs, it's really basically the same. And it is college by college in terms of how they are going to treat credit that you have gotten for taking an AP class. So for an application, you want to know what is required, right? Is it a common application? Is it the coalition? And Kaylee's going to go over what the difference is between those two in a minute. Are there supplements? So again, like I said, you're not planning to study the arts, but you have a lot of material, either as a performing, a musician or somebody who writes music or as a visual artist. And you want to know what's involved with those supplements. Most colleges are going to have the general common app essay, and then they're going to have the short answer essays for each school. So it's just important to know and to get organized with what you have to be prepared to do. Read the specific instructions for uploading your portfolios. Colleges are changing all the time. Many are still using Slide Room, which we went over at the portfolio presentation. Some are now using their own sites like NYU. So you just need to know what the schools are going to ask. Understand each application piece and when are items due. So again, are there different deadlines if you're hoping to get merit scholarships or even need-based scholarships? Are there interviews? What kinds of opportunities do you have to get in front of and to make connections with the colleges? So these kinds of details really do matter. And so our recommendation is that you start looking early. I mean, we recommend for our students that they pretty much have a final list of schools, a balanced list of schools by June. So you guys in June, you're seniors. And so you should have already started either visiting schools or doing virtual tours, whatever you're going to do to figure out who's going to make it on your list. So as we've said before, there's early decision, which is usually November 1st. It's like a marriage. If you apply early decision, you are committed to going if they admit you. The only reason that you can get out of that commitment is financial based, and that is not easy to do. But I will tell you, for schools that have very low acceptance rates, the rates for their early decision group are much higher. So if you're looking at a school that's admitting maybe 15% of their applicants regular decision, they're usually admitting closer to 30% through early decision. Early action is just for kids who are very organized. So it's usually around the same deadline as early decision. It is like dating, not a marriage. You are not committed. So you might hear back early that you're admitted, but you are not required to commit to them till May 1st. Regular decision is just the normal decision deadline. Rolling admissions means you apply and you're going to hear back around 6 to 8 weeks after you apply. I should note that for some schools, they have two different deadlines for early decision, maybe November 1st and January 1st. Typically, they'll only have one for early action. Okay, so Kaylee, this is you.
Yeah, I'm going to go through just a couple different types of applications, like common websites that most schools use, ones that you guys will encounter. This is what the standard portion of the common application looks like. All of this stuff. So you guys as juniors now can open a common application. You can start filling it out. You can only, if you want everything to remain the same and saved, you can only start filling out the profile portion of the common application, which is shown here. So just all of your biographical data. It's who you are, where you go to school. It's information about your parents and your siblings, what your parents' educational background is, their jobs, There's a section for testing, which is where you can self-report SAT, ACT, and AP tests that you've taken. You have to check individually what the requirements are for the schools that you end up applying to, if they will accept a self-reported score from the testing section of the Common App or whatever application they're using. Sometimes you don't have to send them an official score report, but again, you have to check it because it's individual to each school. Some do need an official score report. All of this stuff, like I said, you can start filling out now. It will roll over. So the Common App at the end of July typically shuts down for a day or two. They reboot everything with all the new questions, all of the updates that schools have made individually to their applications, but all of the stuff that you put in this section remains the same. So you can start working on it now or whenever you want. Could you go to the next slide? This is the activities section of the Common App, which might look small, but it's actually one of the most consequential parts that you can spend time filling out, because it's one of the few ways that you have to tell schools what you have done outside of your academic classes. It's pretty limited, so you have to use the space in a really intentional and careful way. There's only 10 activities that you can have, and you don't have to use all 10, but anything that goes on this list, like I said, should be anything that falls outside of the purview of academic classes. So sometimes, like, I think Harriet, Robert, and I will all tell our freestyle students that even though freestyle is an academic class, if it is a significant way that you use time, sometimes you can write about the work that you've done outside of it, working on projects and doing like post and pre-production and et cetera, right? Because it is a way that you spend a substantial amount of time, but you couldn't, for instance, put your like freestyle film class. That wouldn't work. Could you go to the next slide? There's pretty hard character limits on the descriptions that you can write for each activity. So you have to use the space really carefully. What that means, though, is that you don't have to use complete sentences. It is completely acceptable. It is totally expected that you will not use complete sentences because you only have 150 characters to describe each thing, and you only have 10 activities, like I said. So when you're thinking about how you're going to write these, you want to be sure to, like I said, not use complete sentences. So get rid of unnecessary articles. You should also start each sentence or description, sentence within the description, with verbs, with, action words. And you want to focus on what you did there as opposed to what the organization is that you were working for. So again, if we're just using freestyle as an example, this person is not describing freestyle. They are describing what they did in the extracurricular work that they did outside of freestyle, scripted film and edited films I made with friends, right? So again, use action words. You don't have to use complete sentences, and pay special attention to describing anything that you did that could qualify as a leadership position, or anything that you did that, again, took personal initiative, that was something, the actual action of what you were doing in the organization, not the organization itself. Next slide.
So I believe this is Robert.
So once we recommend, at least, keeping in mind that it's going to go dark in July. So you can start looking and start adding colleges now, but you won't get the most accurate version until after July. But on the Common App, you can search any college that takes the Common App on the Common App and add it to your list of my colleges, this tab on the Common App, which I think will be in the next slide. But you can see all this other data here. But yeah, so then your My Colleges tab. So the Common App tab is where you're going to fill out everything what Kaylee was talking about general information. I would suggest starting that now. There's some, the education part, you have to fill out like every class and every grade. You have to submit each school's Common App separately. So there ends up being like a lot of little annoying steps that you can kind of get a lot of it out of the way in the summer. But so then once you add all your colleges, they end up on the My Colleges tab. And oftentimes under like there'll be like a writing subsection where they have the actual supplemental essay prompts. So you can look at those and look at the word count and blah, blah, blah. Next slide. So recommenders and FERPA. So you have to sign this FERPA agreement, which basically says that you give permission to not have access to the rec. They don't want you to see the rec. They want the teacher to communicate directly with a Common App. And we recommend asking 2 academic, that's, English, math, science, foreign language, history, and then 1 art, or, a teacher that's kind of relevant to a major that you're applying to. And I would ask them now or as soon as possible, especially the academic ones, because those are usually, they only have a limited number of spots. And so, it's kind of a first come, first serve thing. So I would, and we suggest asking teachers that know you the best as a student, who can really speak to your work ethic, your, enthusiasm, your, sort of it's not necessarily the class that you got the best grade in. Next slide. Okay, so yeah, kind of more I was talking about, more important. So the test score thing, it's more important because there's some places are test optional. It also kind of gives, again, we always recommend any way that you can kind of give them more insight into your personality. And, I think that teachers definitely can validate a lot of those qualities in the letter. And then we also suggest we have a way of, we can even help you sort of compose a letter. When you ask a teacher, if you're asking them by email, you kind of want to say, I really responded to this class because I, learned XYZ that I'm really interested in. And I felt like I really applied myself because I was so inspired by the material. And when you sometimes kind of give them reasons why you're asking them, they'll also write you a better letter of rec, because they'll kind of start to think about you as a student and your best qualities. Next slide.
Okay, so this is Kaylee.
There are a couple other types of applications that you guys might encounter that are fairly commonly used. One is the coalition application. In all honesty, it's fallen out of favor in the last couple of years. There aren't really any schools that I can think of that exclusively use the coalition application, except for the University of Washington, which only lets you apply through the coalition app. But it is technically an alternative to the Common App that a lot of schools still let you apply through. It is very, very similar to the Common App. It just, in my opinion, is less user friendly. So personally, if you have the option to, all of your schools are, exclusively on the Common App or their own personal websites, I would probably choose to use the Common App. Still, again, you'll find much of the same. There's a big section of biographical information. There's a big section, right, similar to the Common App's profile section. There's a big section where you get to describe all of your activities. It has kind of similar character counts, though I think theirs are a little bit higher. And then there is also a section for a essay that, again, has prompts that are very similar to the Common App essay. So you get to use a lot of the same things you've already spent time writing, though once again, the individual requirements for essays and things that you'll have to write for the individual schools will still be different, but you get to repeat a lot of the same information. I would still, if you have the option though, probably try to use the Common App. Next slide.
Just happened. I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I lost my power.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Share screen. Sorry, operator error.
Okay.
There we go.
The UC application is only used by the UCs, and they are only on this application I can't tell you how many times students have come back to me being like, oh, I couldn't find UCLA on the Common App. Yes, that's because it only uses the UC app. You apply to all of the UCs through here. Again, you will end up repeating all of the same biographical information you put on any number of websites at this point, Common App Coalition, etc. Some key differences between the UC app and the other ones that I've just talked about are the fact that they have 4 separate essays that you have to write. They give you 8 prompts. You are supposed to choose 4 from that list of 8 and write them. They are written in a way that is not meant to be a story that you're telling. They are not meant to be pieces of creative writing. They are meant to be effectively stand-ins for interviews. So you write them as if you are answering interview questions. This is something that, like, I believe we talk about in other presentations that we give. If it is confusing, you are always welcome to come talk to us about it. But that is one of the primary ways that it's different from other applications. The other thing is that they give you a pretty substantial character count to describe your activities, and they also give you the space to describe many more of them. So you have up to 20 activities or awards that you have the space to describe. They give you like 300 some odd characters to describe the organization that you work for, and then another 300 or 250, I think those two are swapped, to describe what you actually did as part of the organization. It has a different set of rules for how they want you to describe awards versus activities. So again, I would say you can start looking at their requirements for different character counts and how they recommend you go about writing the activities. They have all this information on their websites. It's something that you can start now, and it's something that you can get done really easily over the summer. Next slide. Finally, this is the CSU application, the Cal State application, not to be confused with the UC application, but all CSUs use this. There are no essays. Like it said in a previous slide, also, neither the UCs or the CSUs use letters of recommendation. This also doesn't have any essays that you have to write for it. It's just all of that biographical information you keep on getting to repeat in a million different places. The one thing I will say for both the CSUs and the UCs is that there are a handful of visual and performing arts programs that do require extra things that you have to submit, portfolios or auditions with pre-screens or etc. And those are always submitted through other websites, most of the time through a website called Slide Room or through Get Accepted, or occasionally like an applicant portal style thing. It's a website that's just run by the university that you get a link to after you apply. So once again, you should really spend time looking over the requirements for how you actually go about applying to any program that you're interested in, and start getting organized as early as possible, because there are lots of moving parts and it can be really confusing. But both the UCs and the CSUs have additional components beyond just these applications if you are applying to visual or performing arts programs, but only certain UCs or CSUs. So look at the requirements and get organized.
Okay, so we've been over, you're going to hear us say this at every time that we present to you guys. The way for you to have a successful and a non-stressful college application experience is to be really careful when you're crafting your list. So we say no more than 4 to 5 lottery schools. So these are schools that admit less than 15% of their applicants. So what that means is that they're saying no thank you to a very large group of qualified applicants. This is not a bunch of kids that don't belong there. It's that they have this many seats for this many applicants. And so, you know, you cannot take the risk of saying, well, I have this high GPA and I have the right scores and I have the right letters. I have everything lines up. I should get into that school. It is still a numbers game. and you do not know the institutional priorities, like I said before. So if you apply to more than 4 or 5 lottery schools, you need to be willing to be told no by each and every one of them, because there is a distinct possibility that that is going to happen. I've been doing this a long time. Kaylee and Robert have been doing this a while, and every year we talk in awe about who got admitted for animation at USC and who didn't. You know, I mean, can we look at work and predict? Kind of, sort of. But in terms of how they're going to read those essays and how they're going to analyze the data on your the entire application, we will never know. And if somebody tells you, I know, and I can tell you, they are not being truthful, because they don't know. So all you can look at is trends and what happened in the past. But if you are looking at an admit rate of less than 15%, you need to be very judicious with how many of those schools you're going to put on your list. So the 8 to 10 possible schools are the ones that we call like more of a target, right? So your grades, your test scores, I'm going to talk about those in a minute, your creative work, align with the schools, not only their requirements, but their mission. You guys, before you sit down to write any of your essays about why you want to attend a certain school, you better be able to state the mission of that school and its program. Because sure, they all want to educate people to blah, 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 whatever. No, there are distinct differences in the culture of programs. And if you understand what a Boston University is looking for as opposed to a Carnegie Mellon, I'm just throwing those out, you will understand why your application might be looked at more favorably at one school than another. 1 to 2 safety schools are schools that have excellent programs, but admit more broadly. So again, we're going to go back to the playground gossip. My child is just beside themselves that they didn't get into XYZ school. And then I say, but tell me where they did get admitted. And the list of fabulous options where they got admitted is really impressive. But everybody tends to focus on one school or, one idea. And in college admissions, it's not a perfect science. So I am begging you to be very careful when you craft this list, and just make sure it's balanced and that you are creating a list where you have identified who has what you want. Okay. Are the SAT and ACT truly optional? Okay, so this year alone, the Georgia public colleges, universities, Georgia Tech, et cetera, went test optional for about 5 minutes, and now they're back to requiring it for every public school in the state. MIT just said they're going to require test scores for your class applications. Most other colleges that you're looking at are test optional. So if you want to know who is, you go to fairtest.org and you keep checking, because it will change. My advice, our advice to you guys is, depending on where you're applying and what kind of programs you're applying to, you really should try to take the test at least once. And I'm going to tell you why. 70% of the kids admitted to the most competitive, highly rejected programs submitted test scores. And these schools that are saying, oh no, we're test optional, really, it's okay, they admitted less than 50% this year of the students who applied without test scores. Now, if you are applying to a portfolio or an audition-based program, you are being measured in a very different way. But those are also still very competitive. So if you are a bad test taker and you don't think your score is going to be in the middle 50% of pass scores for a school, you might want to think about, okay, I'm going to go test optional. But I really would encourage you to take either the SAT or the ACT at least once. You can take it as late as October. It's fine. Even if you're applying early decision, it's fine. You don't really, the days of taking it multiple times to try to get a better score, I'm not a big fan of that. you do you guys can decide what you want to do, but prep for the test about 6 to 8 weeks before. And that doesn't mean you have to hire a private tutor, but it does mean you should go online and look for free tests that you can take. You got to get used to the pacing of the exam. You got to get used to how they ask the questions. So prepare, and take that test at least once if you can. Some colleges are now test blind. What does that mean? Like the UCs and the CSUs, they're not taking the test scores. You submit them, they're not looking. They are blind to the test. And that is absolutely true. There's none of this, oh, do they really mean it? That is the case. Other colleges are starting to go test blind. You know, again, you got to look at the schools. You have to look on their website to figure out, again, what are their policies? So I know we're going to have lots of questions about these tests, but I would say, are they truly optional? Maybe, kind of, sort of. All right, Robert, you are up.
What is demonstrated interest? Pick a small number of schools to which you'd like to demonstrate some interest. And then, so it could be anything from, definitely signing up for virtual or in-person tours and department tours if possible, reaching out to admissions. Sometimes on their website, they have students they can put you in touch with, like student ambassadors. And sometimes you can email the admissions and saying, if I'm really interested in this school, if you could pass my email on to any other students who would be willing to talk to me. There's so many different ways to show engagement. And, once it's like, if they allow you to come on campus, visiting, connecting with professors and students. And, it's kind of it's a win-win, because the more you do this, the more you kind of can collect data for yourself about, which schools you're interested in. And the more on their end, it looks like you're going to go if they accept you, which is what they want, because, they don't want to accept students who won't go. So, sometimes they have interviews, sometimes they have portfolio critiques. And those can also be super helpful, because if, an admissions representative can give you a critique on your portfolio in November and you're applying by January, you can, that can be really helpful in how you're going to proceed between the small period of time between then. Next slide. Okay, so for financial aid and scholarships, it's usually FAFSA is financial aid consideration. And we were talking about how we would even recommend just filling it out, because in case you don't know what will happen in the future, and sometimes schools need you to fill it out in order to give you financial aid if you are asking for it partway through college. And then the CSS is mostly for private schools, but it's it's important for scholarships and merit-based scholarships. So definitely we definitely recommend going to the college website, though, to really look at each college's requirement, because they're all a little bit different. And being mindful of the deadlines, because the deadlines creep up pretty fast. Next slide.
Okay, Haley.
Things that you can begin working on as a junior, which is what I assume most of you are, probably not seniors. Start doing college research, right? So you can do virtual info sessions on schools. If you can't go physically visit in person, you can start reaching out to, like Robert was saying, admissions departments, or again, the just departmental contact for whatever college department houses your major. Like Robert was saying, you can start asking them to speak with current students. You can start reaching out to individual faculty members if they have, again, work, or they're publishing work, or they are producing work that you really, really like. So it's the foundation of what we have all of our students start out doing, which is number one, looking at the curriculum of a particular major and looking individually at the classes that you have to take to decide whether or not that major is in alignment with your goals for what you want to learn as an undergrad. This is a huge, huge, huge part of you building out your list, because it's the way that, like Harriet was saying in the beginning, it's the way that you begin building a case for why you are going to be a good fit for a program, that everything that they're going to teach you and the opportunities that you're going to have in that program are in alignment with, even if the plans change, because they will inevitably change, or in alignment with how you imagine your practice growing as you get older and progress through college. So all of that, looking at the curriculum, looking at the faculty for evidence that these are people who are going to be able to mentor you and push your work and your academic interests in directions that you might not be able to conceptualize right now. Looking for evidence of both of those things are things that you can do right now. It's like basic internet research. You can go look up the curriculum for a major. You can go read a bunch of faculty bios. And if those people interest you enough, you can reach out to them. They are not always going to respond to your emails, but you can email them. And then later on, when you are going to write essays about why you are applying to a particular program, you can say, I reached out to Professor so-and-so because I really enjoyed or felt like I really understood and connected with the way that they were working on X, Y, or Z project, and yada, yada, yada. You don't have to say that you spoke with them. You can just say that you reached out to them. But again, all of these are steps that you can start doing now. You can also begin taking practical steps that help all of the people at your school who are supporting you or will be supporting you come the fall. You can start your resume on Naviance. So a lot of your teachers will require that you do that, not exclusively. Sometimes they want you to physically give them a resume that you've already begun, but definitely your counselors really rely on that. So I would say start your resume on Naviance now, start filling it out, start working on the way that you describe skills and activities, and like I said, practicing the really active way that you're describing the way that you've been involved in all the things that you're passionate about. And then finally, if you guys take away nothing else from everything that we've said, it's just get organized about it. So as you really start building out a college list from now through like the middle of summer, get to understand when your deadlines are, really engage with the schools by going to things like virtual info sessions or visiting the campus if you can, et cetera, reaching out to admissions, talking to people in the department, and then finally gathering information about practically what are you going to need in order to apply. So how much of the portfolio do you have completed if you have to apply with a portfolio? How much of the repertoire requirement for your audition or your pre-screens, et cetera, do you have completed? If you're applying as a film student, do you have to produce a special film for something in order to fulfill their requirements, right? If you're only allowed to submit up to 5 minutes of film, but you feel like you don't have a project that fits that really showcases your talents in a way that you would like, then do you need to spend some time doing that over the summer? So the more you get organized now, the better off you will be, and understand that those requirements and their deadlines might change, but you can find a lot of overlap and there will still be a lot of consistency. And then finally, you can also, like we were saying previously, you can open up a Common App now, you can start filling it out, just the profile section, because when it shuts down in the middle of the summer and then reopens 24 hours later, it won't save anything besides any of the information that you put in the profile. But you can still go on there and familiarize yourself with different requirements and different things that schools need from you. So that's it.
Just one more thing about the rollover. This can be a little bit confusing. The Common App that you're going to log into tonight is actually for the 2021-2022 season. But the questions in that main Common App, so you remember all the tabs across the top, in the main Common App part, that information, your family, your education, the stuff about you, that's not going to change. They will ask for current courses. What they are talking about is your senior year courses. So that might change, but if you already have selected your classes, you know what you're taking next year, you can go ahead and fill that in, and obviously the activities can be filled in. The part that Robert was talking about, you guys, again, the part that is where you search for a college and populate your college tab, typically the colleges will change. They often change, and so change what they're asking for. So not a lot, and so the essays might change a little bit, but we recommend if you do add in the colleges, don't spend a lot of time filling out their information that they're asking of you, because that usually doesn't follow you when you roll over. So what'll happen is you'll go to sign in and they'll say they're down for service or whatever. And then when you sign back in another day later or 2 days later, whatever, they'll say, do you want to roll over what you've already started working on? You say yes. And all the data that they will take from the old application will then populate the 2022-2023 application, which is yours. Okay. So, oh, all right, once again, stop sharing my screen. So I'm gonna go back.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
we didn't have any questions from anybody, but if anything has come up, please.
Yeah, I have one final thought. Actually, I have several final thoughts. So you guys, even though we've been talking about admissions and the mechanics of the application and all that, here's my advice. Think about college, all right? Think about the experience you want. Think about who you want sitting on either side of you. Think about what you like about school, what you don't like about school, and how you want to change up that culture if you do, or if you're looking for another freestyle, which is there in college, I can tell you that. But train yourself now to not think about admissions, right? Because where you go, what college, what bumper sticker you have to put on your parents' car is not who you're going to be. Who you're going to be is a direct relationship to how you perform in college, how you engage with your faculty, how you get to know the other students, how you look for opportunities to learn new things, okay? So think about college. I've said this already tonight, but I'm going to say it again. Read a book not related to your schoolwork, because I can't tell you how many times they're going to ask you this question, whether in an interview or in an essay question or whatever. What have you read recently outside of school? The kids are like, Instagram. No, try to read a book, nonfiction, fiction, whatever, that is not related to your schoolwork. Once again, holistic review means using all parts of your application to reflect who you are and what matters to you. So again, here I am repeating myself, but with the increase, the overwhelming increase in applications, you protect yourself by having a balanced list. So here's the data. This year, okay, this year for class of 2022, the University of California at Santa Barbara got 118,000 applications. I'm not talking about the UC system. I'm talking about Santa Barbara. They have seats for 6,000. That's why you got to balance your list. And finally, remember that you're not going to ask, what do I need to do to get in? You're going to ask, who has what I want? Okay, so do we have any questions, Kaylee, that we need to address?
Oh, yes, one just came in. How important is GPA in the application for majors such as film design and animation?
I'll let you take that one, Hales.
Okay, sure. So I can't remember if it was Harriet or Robert who said it earlier, but one of them inevitably said that if you were applying to a program that takes a portfolio, or not just takes a portfolio, but requires a portfolio, 9 times out of 10, that will end up being weighted slightly as like the most important part of the application, because they are talent-based programs that they are assessing you based on your ability to, again, be a good fit and your technical skills and et cetera. So the portfolio will take, I would say, a little bit of precedent in that instance. However, it's pretty dependent from school to school. So some schools are much more grade sensitive. Like USC is extremely grade sensitive. they really, really do value a super high GPA just as much as they value a really strong portfolio. So it depends a little bit, but I would say that the strength of a portfolio or a strong portfolio in general can pretty substantially, not exclusively, there's still limitations, but it can definitely make up for deficits in your GPA where maybe your GPA isn't completely in line with the rest of the averages for the school. So it depends a little bit. Portfolio, however, is very, very important, and GPA not as important in certain instances.
I'm going to add just one thing.
Yeah.
Colleges are looking for evidence that you've challenged yourself. So if you've taken a bunch of easy classes and no APs and have straight A's, they don't actually value that. They're going to say, well, you clearly are a smart student. Why haven't you taken classes that will challenge you more? So again, they want to know that you're ready for the rigor of a college education. And as Kaylee said, it really does depend. But more and more the colleges are using a GPA as they're looking for evidence of kids and their ability to be successful in their program. How are colleges basing their merit scholarships? So there is a difference between need-based aid and merit scholarship. The best way to find that out is to look at the financial aid section of each college's application. Merit scholarship is really what it says. It's based on merit. Oftentimes, there are going to be extra essays that the students have to write. There are some merit scholarships that are kind of theme-based. So whatever that theme might be, they're going to ask the student to write in reference to that. So merit scholarship is really what it is. It's completely subjective, and the colleges have money to give away. Here's what I will tell you guys, that no one pays the sticker price. So you go on I'm talking about a private college. You go on any private college's website, and if it says it costs $10 to go to that college, you will not pay $10. These colleges all have endowments, and I can back that up with data. I'm not making this up. So if you're looking at a school and you go, oh, we can't afford $50,000, no one pays $50,000. But the more merit aid is going to go to the students who are the stronger applicants. Absolutely. But please do not look at the cost of college as stated in the tuition for that school on their website, because for the private colleges, it's very rare that anybody actually pays that price. Can you give us a view on a state, out-of-state tuition fees? Okay. Hi, Stan. So the view on the state or out-of-state tuition fees, I'm just going to use my own children as an example. My son went to University of California, he went to UCLA, and my daughter went to University of Oregon, out of state. But with the amount of merit aid that Julia received from Oregon, and once both kids were out of the dorms and were living, Ben in the very expensive area around UCLA, and Julia in Eugene, Oregon, the price just kept getting closer and closer and closer. So when you look at tuition fees, you have to look at what is involved for my child to live there, to eat there, to buy their books there. And you have to take into account, if you're looking in-state at public schools, you're likely to get less merit aid. They just don't give it out from the UCs, like some of the out-of-state schools will get if they're trying to attract out-of-state applicants. I hope that answered your question. Okay, yes, thanks. Any more questions, guys? Now's your chance. You have us here. If you think of more questions, you can email me at my Freestyle email address, ccc@freestyle. And I will promise to get back to you as soon as I can. These are technical applications, and the best way to prepare yourself is to really look at them and to understand what is involved. The other thing I'm going to tell you is, please don't wait till 11 o'clock p.m. before midnight on the deadline. The UC application will crash. The Common App will crash. You're going to have baby kittens over this. It's really stressful. Try to submit your application no closer than 2 weeks before the deadline, because then they will give you access to what's called an applicant portal. And the applicant portal is where you're going to sign on immediately and look for those green check marks that they actually have your letters of rec, that they have your transcript from the school, that they have all the pieces that they feel they need to have a complete application. So.
Can you hear me? Or I wasn't sure it was working.
Yes.
Oh, yes, good stuff. Sorry, I came late to the call, so my apologies if you didn't hear it earlier. So what we find out, we spent some time with our daughter this weekend to look into the, which college and so on, and on the price. You mentioned that no one pays the full price, but how do you, when you do your application, you kind of perhaps go pretty wide. When do you get to know about this, merit grants and all those kind of things? Because at some point you have to decide to accept, but how do you accept, on which foundation? How the timeline works?
So typically the merit aid or the need-based aid offers come with the offer of admission. So your daughter will get an email, used to be a letter, but they'll get some kind of an email communication that says, congratulations, you've been admitted for the class of 2024 or 2023. Sorry, I jumped ahead. And here is what we can offer you in the way of merit aid. And because at that point, you can also write a letter that says, you know what, your school's my top choice, but I've been offered more money from this other school. Can you give me a little bit more money? These are not rock solid. There is room for negotiation.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so Robert, why don't you take this one? What is a good way to research art schools?
So there's a couple different ways. You could look on acad.org and you can look by your major and they will kind of recommend, we often use them to look at their evaluation of the best art schools for each program. It totally Harriet put it in the chat. It depends on the art school. The one school that we don't encourage you to apply to is SCAD because it's unaccredited and they kind of admit everyone in without a portfolio and the faculty doesn't stay there very long, but they have an amazing PR team. And so everyone thinks they're, a good school, but we wouldn't suggest applying there. And I think it's dependent on the major. So I would maybe start to, sometimes you start with like a cursory Google of best fashion design programs. And then you kind of start to look at each of those schools' websites and look at the requirements and look at student work if it's online and look at the curriculum to get kind of a better sense because, each school kind of does different things with their majors. So everything's a little bit different and it's kind of dependent on the school. So that's how I would answer that.
One of the other things, you guys, that I recommend is that Mr. Florendo has done a great job of putting up where Freestyle kids have gone. And he actually puts up where they've gotten money. So that's a good way to know historically who's been friendly to the Freestyle community, right? And so that way you can figure out some of the schools and some of the options. I know it can be very confusing, but this is why we say start researching now and I would say a great place for you Freestyle kids is to look at where Freestyle alumni have studied.
And in the chat, I'm going to put in the chat the URL to our webpage for alumni. In fact, a lot of alumni they tell me they're willing to talk to current Freestyle students if they want to get in contact with them. I can't give out email addresses, but I can put you in touch with them. And so it has to kind of go through me. So, yeah, if you have a particular school and it looks like somebody from Freestyle is going there or has gone there, I'm glad to put you in touch with them.
Can I add to that? We always get questions about websites that rank programs as like these are the absolute best programs like US News and World Report and stuff like that. Those lists might be jumping off points for you to look at individual programs, but they shouldn't be taken seriously because schools pay to bump their rankings on those lists. So they're not reliable. They're not reflecting actual data. They're reflecting how much money a school has in order to get its name higher on the list. So something to keep in mind.
I'm going to answer this last one. Oh no, it's not the last one. There's another one, but this was I love art and I'm excited about the classes, but I may not be an art major. Is that okay? So of course it's okay. You get to go to college and study whatever it is you think you want. And I would tell you that 75% of the freshmen at Stanford change their major. So when you say I love art, I'm assuming that means you make art. And depending on how much you like the art you make, then you might want to use an art supplement to show the colleges why you love to communicate visually. So that, not just submitting a portfolio because you're applying for an art major, but submitting what's called an art supplement to a college. And many of them take that as just evidence of your passion. Okay, if an art portfolio is needed, do you turn it in with the Common App or separately? Where would you turn it in? Robert, you want to take that one?
Sure. Do you turn it in with a Common App or separately? So oftentimes you actually use Slide Room, which is a platform that's kind of aligned with the Common App, but that's where you upload all of your individual images, and then they have some space for some additional comments that we recommend you write. And sometimes they'll be like for RISD, they have an assignment as well as a portfolio through Slide Room. And so you upload individual JPEGs or image files to this, the page for the assignment pieces, and then the rest is in the portfolio. Some schools have their own portal, like Parsons has their own portal. And sometimes if you're just submitting an art supplement, it could be a PDF that you attach. And so it's not usually on the Common App. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, guys? This is your opportunity. You've got Kaylee and Robert and me sitting here, and we know a lot of stuff. So if there aren't any more questions.
There aren't any more questions. First of all, thank you very much to Kaylee and Robert and Harriet for doing this every year. It's amazing. I know there was a lot of information, thrown at you in the last hour. This is being recorded, and the link to the video will be sent out to you, so you can always review it in case you want to go back. I think the next thing we're going to try to do is have a panel of actual seniors be available for questioning about how they went through their process. So I think we'll try to do that in person, and we'll try to figure that out, but we'll let you know. It's going to be sometime in the spring, obviously. If there's no more questions, we'll let everybody go and have a good evening. Thank you very much, Harriet, Kaylee, and Robert. Yay. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.